Hello and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Hello, I'm DJ Ross. I am in Mountain View, California.
Each week here on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. This week that list includes Witchwood and Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker, and also trying to get in shape with video games.
Oh, who is that? Couldn't be me.
It was, well, process of elimination, I think maybe we would land on me in this scenario. Yeah.
Narrowed it down. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Interesting.
Hopefully. Maybe. I'm not sure. We'll see. It has been an adventure.
A Ring Fit adventure.
It has, in fact, been a Ring Fit adventure, correct.
Okay. Yeah. See, I know my fitness video games.
Do you have any pre-show babble, or would you like me to start my my adventure in video game fitness?
Oh, I don't know. It's been a while since we did one of these.
Taco
I know
Bell,
we did.
Weather,
we just
anything?
Taco Bell. I know we just did our Game of the Year show, but I feel like it's been so long since we just did a normal episode where we're talking about what we've been playing lately.
Yeah.
In fact, for me, I haven't even played anything new. I've just been playing Endwalker for like a month straight. So, I mean, I guess it is still current.
Yeah. There has not been a Final Fantasy XIV since Endwalker, so it's not like you're playing an old one.
It's true. Yeah, it's the latest one. But no, I didn't come prepared with pre-show babble. Is there anything on your mind?
No. And I mean, there's really no new Mountain Dew I've tried. There's nothing new at Taco Bell I've tried. There's nothing new in Animal Crossing this week, so that generally knocks out about 80% of the things we usually talk about at this point in the show.
I did get a bunch of New Year's decorations for my Animal Crossing house, which I was very excited about.
Oh, nice.
Just to, tie all this together, Animal Crossing, Final Fantasy, everything. There is like, there's this piece of, I guess you would call it a piece of furniture, but it's like a Japanese New Year's decoration called a kadomatsu. Mm-hmm. And it's like they have it in Animal Crossing now, so you may have seen this. It's like, I don't know what specifically defines a kadomatsu. What are the qualities you need for something to become this thing? But it's generally like several stalks of bamboo arranged in a little pot. And I discovered that you like place a couple of these things around or like on either side of your doorway, and it's supposed to, I don't know, bring you good luck for the new year or something. Something to that effect. I'm probably way off. Please don't send me angry emails.
Angry emails from Japan.
Yeah, right. But I think they're so cool. And as it happens, you can buy these things in Final Fantasy XIV, so I have a couple. I like to put them out in front of my fake house every New Year. And so I was just so pleased when they added them to Animal Crossing this year. I was like, oh man, It's those things. I'm going to grab a couple of those, and it'll officially be New Year in Animal Crossing.
I have a couple of those. I have one on either side of the entrance of my house.
Yeah. Well, see, there you go. You're doing it correctly.
In the game, not in my house in Harrisburg.
Right.
Cool.
Well, so there's another part to this is the first year they had these in Final Fantasy, it was like part of the New Year's event. I was like, oh, here's this funny looking bamboo thing. So I just got one, and I didn't know what you're supposed to do with it, so I just put it in the middle of my yard. I was like, yeah, that's festive. It's like a Japanese Christmas tree. Mm-hmm. And then, so I ended up going to Japan around New Year's following that, and I actually got to see these things, and I was like, oh, everyone has two of these. And they're not just in the middle of the yard, they're very specifically placed next to the doorways. So I was just, oh, so I was just an idiot placing this thing in the middle of the yard like a maypole or something and being like, aha, I have done it. So every year since then, I've been like, made sure to grab a second one, made sure to put it in the appropriate spot. We look a little less ignorant of the traditions or whatever.
Well, good for you. That's respectful. That's nice.
I hope so. Yeah, that's you know, I like to decorate respectfully.
Does it do anything? Does it trigger anything in Final Fantasy, or is it just a decoration?
No, it's just a decoration.
Yeah.
You know, it's like putting up a wreath.
Has been an element of Animal Crossing games in the past. Less so in New Horizons, but you have good luck days and bad luck days. Bad luck days, for the most part, historically, you would trip and fall on your face sometimes in the game and stuff like that. I see. Yeah.
No, it doesn't affect your feng shui or whatever. That's not really the equivalent.
Yeah, Feng Shui is still a thing in New Horizons, and luck is a minor element. It doesn't happen very often. But I was wondering if maybe there was some in-game benefit to having them near your door, but there does not appear to be in Animal Crossing or in Final Fantasy. They're just decorative.
Well, I guess it just depends on how superstitious you are.
Right, yeah. If somebody burns down your Final Fantasy XIV house, you go, no. I should have done the things.
Oh, that's why I should have gotten 2 of them. Mm-hmm.
Well, at least if it's in the yard, it's far enough away from the house that it would also not burn.
Well, that's true, yeah. This guy, whole house burned down except for the one single kadomatsu.
The single kadomatsu, exactly.
Yeah, great. Then it's just, nice. Me sitting there in the middle of my burned out lot. Everybody can see my shame, just this incorrectly positioned piece of furniture.
Sobbing and hugging your kadomatsu.
That's all I have left. I just have the one.
It's my one thing, exactly. Good. Well, cool.
Yeah, very cool. I don't know. That's all I got.
That's fine. That's good. That was the appropriate amount of pre-show babble, and it was gaming related, so maybe we won't get any angry tweets.
It was, yeah. It was vaguely gaming related. It makes me sad because I don't know how long you're supposed to observe New Year's, but probably should be taking those things down pretty soon.
Yeah. That's an old George Carlin thing. Is like, how far into the new year do you keep wishing people Happy New Year?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like if you don't see a friend until April, do you then say to them Happy New Year?
I feel like that's pushing it.
Right. I think so too. Absolutely. I think George Carlin agreed with us. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think mid to late January is probably
mid to late January.
Maybe get like a 3-week window on that.
Sure. Yeah, last week of January just for some reason just doesn't feel like you got to start getting ready for Valentine's Day or whatever.
Right. You start seeing, Valentine's Day decorations and commercials for the Super Bowl. It's time to hang up the Happy New Year's and move on to something new.
I wonder how long George Carlin kept his kadomatsus out on display.
I'm not sure. We'll have to check the archive on that.
Oh, boy.
Speaking of New Year, one of my New Year's resolutions was to sort of get back on track with exercising and trying to eat a little bit better. Like a lot of folks, I
sure
packed on a few pounds during the whole quarantine, COVID, post-COVID, COVID again 2.0 situation we've been in. And last summer, got a new job, decided I was going to lose a little bit of weight, try to eat a little healthier, and have done pretty well. But it got a little wicky over the holidays. Fell off the horse a little bit.
Sure.
Around Thanksgiving, and it got real hard to get back up on said horse.
Just physically, it was difficult to climb.
It was difficult, yeah. And, think of the poor horse. But no, it was real tough to get my mojo back. So I decided I was going to go hard January 1st.
Oh.
I got to start tracking my calories again. I got to make sure I'm eating healthy things, making overnight oats and healthy dinners and things like that. Just trying to do a little meal prep. And one of the elements of this that I've never been really, really good at is sort of committing myself to hitting a step goal, hitting some kind of like daily exercise, daily fitness kind of goal, like getting off my butt and doing something to get my blood pumping and try to get a little exercise.
Sure.
And it's freezing here in Pennsylvania. So
right.
Going out.
That's my problem is I always want to I always go out running or something. But I'm just like, oh, it's
Yeah.
so cold. I'll just wait till it's not so cold, and then it's just like hot. It's
Oh no, it's too hot to go running now. Yeah, exactly.
So it's just it's never a good time.
I agree.
So inconvenient.
Yeah. A place where it is always cool and comfortable is in my living room. So I thought, how can I get exercise in my living room? And I have this collection of fitness video games that I have amassed over the years. I have Ring Fit Adventure. I have Wii Fit U. And I have a Wii U that is still hooked up. And believe it or not, and I don't think I ever talked about it on the show, I have a copy of Just Dance 2019.
Oh.
Not
that is
most
news to me.
Yeah, not the most recent Just Dance, but if you put it in, it still works despite it not being 2019 anymore.
Plus, the 2019 was widely regarded as the best Just Dance.
I can't stand by that. I'm not sure, really.
I have no idea. I'm just...
Yeah.
I don't know how much the playlist changes from year to year.
I have thoughts on the playlist.
Okay. I would hope so.
Yeah. Listen, okay, Just Dance specifically, I'm not the target audience for this. I get it. I know I'm not, there are not a bunch of sort of executives sitting in a boardroom at Ubisoft somewhere in France going, what is this random white guy in Pennsylvania who is pushing 50? What kind of music is he listening to? What kind of music does he want to dance to this year?
Right.
Yeah.
We're just waiting for the Just Dance all Morrissey edition.
Exactly. Yep, I could do that. I would like there to be...
not burning a whole lot of calories in that one.
No, probably just sort of swishing around my living room. Yeah. With a rose clenched in my teeth. Yeah.
Do the rose. Here comes the rose.
And here comes the best part. Yeah. It's how you deploy your star power in the game is you clench the rose. You don't bite the rose. You just have to hold it. Okay, this has gone on for a while. I apologize, but thank you that's a great idea. I love the visual. So yeah, it's a lot of just really horrible pop music.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, that's what you want for a dance game,
right?
I imagine.
Just truly atrocious pop music. And I'm not up on pop music. I generally don't follow pop music, so I look through this list of names, and there are a few, Lady Gaga, Sia. That's about it, really. That I know. There are not a lot of pop musicians on there that musicians is generous, pop singers that I'm aware of. So it has been Lizzo. I know Lizzo. I'm familiar with Lizzo. Lizzo is in there. So these are not bad. Those are fun songs. I sort of generally it comes on and I go, I think I've heard this Lady Gaga song before. Mm-hmm. But yeah, not too much off that path. There's a few Queen songs. There's a few ABBA songs. I'm familiar with those. But I feel like there should be Madonna or Culture Club or 80s stuff in here. People like 80s music. I grew up during the 80s.
There's no 80s stuff on there?
There's not a lot of 80s stuff. No, not really.
There's not an 80s edition? That seems like a given.
Yeah, it seems like that should be kind of there's an ABBA edition, and I think a lot of the ABBA stuff gets carried into, because you can play songs from previous Just Dance games.
Why is there an ABBA edition of everything? Wasn't there a SingStar ABBA?
Probably.
That's weird. Somebody must have a connection. They're just oh, we just found the rights to every ABBA song. It was in a drawer. Yep.
Let's put it in everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's Queen songs in there. There's I don't know. There's not a lot of other stuff that really jumps out at me as okay, this speaks to me musically. Yes, they make you dance. Yes, they are sort of a lot of high energy, very sort of, danceable songs. And that's your goal with a game called Just Dance. But it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't meet me where I'm at musically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's one of the toughest things about playing any music game, though, I feel because,
a
lot of these games, when I get them, it's these weird games from Japan or Korea, and so it's not necessarily the Rock Band model that uses existing songs that I'm familiar with. So I find my first several hours with any music game is just sort of just me trying to penetrate the song list and being are any of these good? Which one of these do I dislike the least? And just trying to find that hook, because once you do that, you can finally start getting into the song, getting more familiar with it. But sometimes it can be pretty rough.
Yeah. I've had that experience with Rock Band. I mean, some of Rock Band was fun because there was an element of music discovery to it.
Yeah, even Rock Band was kind of difficult to get into sometimes.
Yeah, because I'm also not the world's biggest metalhead, and Rock Band and Guitar Hero definitely sort of meet those people where they're at as well. So every now and then stuff that I would kind of sneak into those games, like they've done in Just Dance as well. But yeah, I find that it does not necessarily sort of represent my musical tastes. And if you're trying to make a video game that appeals to the masses, again, my demographic is probably not the one who is most reliably buying Just Dance every year.
Right.
It's just really weird that there's not like a factory somewhere churning out new songs I can buy for $1 to plug into Just Dance, like there was for Rock Band for years and years. Like their model is just put out a new one every year, and new one, and every new one will have 40 songs on it. Plus, you get this Just Dance Unlimited thing that allows you to have access to every previous song that was in the Just Dance series.
Oh, that's what you want.
So it grows every year.
There's no just standalone DLC shop or anything?
There is not. No, I've spent 10 good minutes looking for it, and it just does not exist. It's not a thing in Just Dance. They just put out a new one. You buy the new one the next year for $30, and that's your update.
How do they deliver the previous years if you have that pass, though?
It's like a streaming service. They pop up on the menu. Initially, they say locked, subscribe to unlimited for blah, blah, blah. It's you get... With my copy of Just Dance 2019, there was a surprisingly not expired card inside that gave me 30 free days of unlimited, and then it's $10 every 3 months beyond that, so $40 a year.
Okay.
Yeah. I think they're up to 400 something songs, and you get everything up to your edition. So like I have the 2019 one, so you get every one that was the first one, 2007 or something like that. So you get 12 years of Just Dance songs, which is kind of cool.
That's actually, that's not the worst thing. Like, I remember when I was playing a lot of Rock Band, they kind of had a system where you could do that, like import the songs from your previous games. But it was such a headache. And there was always this question of like, well, will this actually work? Will I get all the previous songs, or like, will some of them mysteriously be left behind somehow? I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I remember the dilemma with Rock Band was that people were trying to move from generation to generation. So you're going from Rock Band 2 to Rock Band 3, from the PS2 to the PS3 or whatever. And there was just, whoever sort of signed the licensing deals on all those songs did not think ahead in that way and make sure that they were future-proofed. So hopefully the folks who make Just Dance are living in a digital world and planning ahead for these contingencies. But
seems like they got it figured out.
Does not function in the way that I would expect a music game to. And it tends to take a pretty narrow pathway to what it considers to be just danceable. That said, though, it's pretty good exercise. Once you get over the initial awkwardness of you standing in your living room, looking at a TV full of young people dancing to music that you don't comprehend, and like waving your arms poorly and trying to shake your ass and move your feet to a song you've never heard before. Once you get over that hump and just kind of go with it, like I was sweating my butt off playing this thing.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. I had my little Android Wear OS watch trying to count my calories, and it was a pretty hearty workout. And I have found that the more that I sort of go back to the songs that I know and have fun dancing to, there were a couple that I was sort of like, oh, that was good. Put that on a playlist. Let's save that song so I can find it again tomorrow without having to sift through 400 tracks. And come back to it tomorrow, and you get slightly better at it. You start to learn the routine. You start to not have to look at the little guide so much, and you sort of, you become a little less self-conscious of yourself kind of dancing in the living room with your girlfriend laughing and scrolling through her phone nearby.
She's not playing it with you?
No, I have not been able to lure her into playing with me. There are duet songs, and I'm like, I'll give her the other controller, and she's not willing to play.
Okay, so wait, so how are you playing this? Is this like a Kinect thing?
It uses the right controller on the Switch, which is the one that has the IR in it. And I'm not sure if it uses the IR, but both Switch controllers have the motion controller in them. And you just hold it in your hand with the strap on, so you don't throw it through the television. And it seems to pick up on the movement of that controller.
Interesting. Okay. So the one I was thinking of, which is the one, I think it was the one that had like the Star Wars version of it, or maybe that was a separate thing, but you would have to like actually strike these specific poses. And I feel like that was where the Kinect came in, because it would kind of be able to see you and
Is that
how you
Dance
were
Central?
shaped. Oh, maybe that was it. Okay. Yeah. I forgot there was that whole other thing.
Yeah. From the makers of Rock Band, if I remember correctly, right? That's Harmonix.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So in this one, it's just the motion controls. Interesting.
Correct. Yeah. So what I found is that it really is just mapping my right hand, which mirroring the dancer on the television is their left hand. And as long as you sort of get the pose right, like if the dancer on the television puts their left hand up in the air, I put my right hand up in the air to mirror it, and I get like 4 stars like that every time. So it's not tracking your feet at all for a dance game. It's really just watching your hands.
So you could do this on the couch if you felt like it.
You probably could, and just do an upper body kind of like exercise thing. I have taken the big step of getting off the couch and standing in my living room and trying to actually move my feet while I do lots of flamboyant hand movements.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
So is it teaching you any cool dance moves? Like can you dab or whatever?
I cannot dab, can't do the Running Man. None of those things. Those are the 2 dances I can think of right now. I'm not sure if those are cool or not, but
I think those are the only 2.
Those are the only 2 dances ever. It is very heavy.
All Running Man until they invented dabbing.
On a lot of like put both hands in the air and then slowly kind of bring them down to your side while doing kind of waving motions on the side. And a lot of hands on the hip stuff. There's a surprising number of like air humping that goes on, which I'm not comfortable with. Yeah, so it's very repetitive, and I think that's maybe the hook to this thing, is that it teaches you these routines by basically breaking each song into like 3 or 4 sort of collections of movements that it sort of cycles through periodically. Yeah, it's fun. I'm having a good time with it. I see the appeal. I can see why these things sell millions of copies. I can see why there are people very devoted to this thing and get super excited about Just Dance, despite, gamers perhaps such as myself kind of condescending to them in the past. And the amount of time that they seem to take up at every awkward E3 presentation for Just Dance. Yeah, I get why this is fun. I get why people are super into this thing. It is also kind of cool that it has a sweat mode, so it knows that people are working out. So you can either play for stars and points to try to set a high score, or you can hit a button and it just converts it over to sweat mode, and it sort of guesstimates how many calories you burn by playing the song.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Which is kind of fun. So I've primarily been playing on sweat mode, although I have switched it over periodically to see, like, well, how am I scoring? Am I doing okay? Because gamer brain, I want to know if I'm beating other gamers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to 5-star all your favorite songs.
Yeah, exactly. I found a few that I have 5-starred.
Oh, well, look at that.
I don't have immediate.
Is there like an advanced mode after you just mastered whatever you're currently playing on?
Sometimes it unlocks alternate editions of songs. So you get, I don't know, pick a song, some Lady Gaga song, and then comes complete with a little skit and little animations and a bunch of sort of costume characters on the screen that you're dancing along with. And if you get a high score or a 5-star kind of thing in that, it will unlock like the alternate edition of the video. So you still get the same Lady Gaga song, but it's different actors and different dancers and different people sort of behaving strangely in the skit. Yeah. The ones that I like that it unlocks are there's Bollywood editions of some of the songs.
Oh man,
I suspect this was done for that market specifically, but they are bonus tracks in the English-speaking version of this game. And when you get a high score on, I don't know, pick a song, Lady Gaga's Just Dance, or is that a person? No, that's the name of the game. What's the Lady Gaga song?
That's
Bad Romance.
That's one of our songs, isn't it?
Is it? I'm not sure. If you get the high score in that, it will unlock the Bollywood version of that Lady Gaga song.
It's the same song, except it's 4 hours long.
Elaborate. Right, exactly. The plot doesn't make sense. You can't keep up with it. A lot of melodrama, but people in very sort of like elaborate costumes with fancy backgrounds, then dancing in a sort of Bollywood manner. Different routines, different sort of, dance moves and stuff like that, all set to the same song. So that's kind of fun. That's kind of a cool little bonus that it unlocks.
Does it change like the actual song at all? So does it sound like a Bollywood version of it?
No, it does not turn it into a. There's no
man.
sitar or anything added to it. It's very. It's the same exact Lady Gaga song, just with different visuals.
That's disappointing. Seems like a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I don't know what the rules are for how much they can monkey with some of these songs. There's some in there that like aren't the original artist, where it's a song that I know there's a Madonna song in there, Lucky Star or something, but it's not performed by Madonna. It's, the Just Dance Orchestra is the one performing it or something. And I'm like, why didn't they just get the Madonna song?
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what the rules are on those things, or if Madonna's not agreeable to it, or maybe she doesn't know the rights to that. Who knows? But yeah. So beyond that, I also have Wii Fit U, which has given me an excuse to use my Wii Fit and my Wii U again, and Ring Fit Adventure, which I had put a lot of hours into when I first got, and then sort of hit a wall. So I went back to both of those, basically deleted my save on Wii Fit U, and dropped the difficulty down on Ring Fit Adventure, since I've not touched it in 6 months, and have been trying to tackle those back to back again. So I have a good routine going, 3-4 nights a week. I will spend an hour 15 playing a little Just Dance, a little Wii Fit U, a little Ring Fit Adventure. And I tend to get 7,500 steps out of this whole thing. I get a good sweat on for an hour or so. I'm just exhausted at the end of it. Like, all my muscles ache and my back hurts and my feet hurt the next day. And I'm like, this feels like a workout.
Nice.
How did I overlook this in the past? How did I not sort of embrace the fact that I had these things in my house that I could just like get off the couch and have moments of activity that I was not doing before, and it's kind of fun. I'm having a good time with it.
Nice. Yeah, I really need to get back on the Ring Fit. I was like into it for a few weeks. Did I think I like hurt my neck in a stupid way? And I was like, oh, well, I can't possibly be expected to do Ring Fit in this condition. So
yeah,
I just shelved it forever.
Oh no.
But and I still have it. It was actually super fun. I should do that again.
It is a very entertaining, very easy game to enjoy. It's an RPG, believe it or not. It has really fun kind of turn-based battles, all tied to you doing fitness moves and stuff like that. I think somebody put a lot of sort of love and work into making Ring Fit way more entertaining than it needs to be to sort of achieve its goal, I think.
Yeah. It was super popular too. You like couldn't even buy it for a while. Yeah.
I'm just now starting to see them kind of pop up on sale and stuff like that. I think they were like $55 over Christmas, and I'm like, ooh, wow. Finally 3 or 4 years into the run, it finally got a discount, and there's enough of them going around.
Nice.
They've added to that too. There's a rhythm game in there that takes songs out of Splatoon and takes songs out of Breath of the Wild, and
I did go back to it because I remember
Super Mario Odyssey. Yeah, those are all in there too. So you can kind of do like rhythm movements with a little fitness squishy thing. What is that thing called? The loop, the ring, basically.
Ring Con or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's actually right. I think it is a ring con.
Good branding.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember that music with the rhythm mode because I was like, okay, all right, let's see what you got. And I tried one of them on one of the higher difficulties, and I was just completely humbled by it. So I was like, all right, okay. So, Nintendo's still not really messing around on those higher difficulties.
Yeah. That is my takeaway from much of Ring Fit Adventure is that it just happily and just completely unassumingly kicks my ass every time I play it.
That's surprising. If you can tweak those settings to make it pretty challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, if anyone who's listening to this is looking for an excuse or a reason or some tool to kind of get a little more activity and get off the couch and maybe lose a little COVID weight or whatever your goals are, do not overlook things like Just Dance or Wii Fit U or Ring Fit Adventure as motivators. Listen, I don't know if I'm getting, like a full gym workout here. I'm probably not going to end up. I don't know who's a good icon for fitness anymore. This is how out of the Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm not going to look like him at the end of this. But I'm getting way more steps and way more energy and burned and way more calories burned and way more activity than I was 3 weeks ago when I wasn't doing these things. So
nice.
As long as it sort of remains entertaining, then I'm in for it.
I'm going to check out that this Just Dance playlist, see what's on there, see if sounds like something I could get into, because that's interesting. I never played one of those because apparently I thought it was a Kinect game, and I don't have one of those things.
Yeah. I was never good at... Did you ever play DDR? Was that the thing that you... Yeah, you were into that?
I had a DDR set in college. Which,
like the whole mat and stuff?
I had a... not like the fanciest mat. I spent a lot of time researching all the different mats out there leading up to this purchase. And you can go pretty high-end if you really want to. But
really?
I stopped short of that.
This is Dance Dance Revolution for our listeners who don't know the reference, yeah.
But, like... I think one of the notable things about that version that I played was on the PS2, but they added a like calorie tracker. So I think cool. By some mumbo jumbo, it would just approximate like, so you hit this many steps, that's about this many calories. So it kind of had its own workout mode, which was kind of cool.
Oh, cool! I didn't know that existed.
Yeah,
it's weird that at least as far as my sort of realm of knowledge goes, that Dance Dance Revolution has not continued to this day. You would think there'd be a crowd for that.
It's kind of around, isn't it? I mean,
like in arcades and like I see them at Dave & Buster's and stuff like that, but I don't think it's a home thing anymore, is it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's tough getting people to invest in a dance pad, but I wouldn't be surprised if like they had one very recently. I mean, by recently, I mean on the Wii. There was like it was either a Mario or like a Disney one. But yeah, you're right. Now that you mentioned, I can't remember the last time I saw somebody advertising a dance pad for current consoles.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised though if it was still hanging in there somehow.
I'll do a little research.
Secret DDR versions.
The homebrew community has taken over. Yeah, people are choreographing their own DDR routines.
Oh yeah, I mean you joke, but that is absolutely 100% happening.
I know. As soon as it came out of my mouth, I was like, "Why?" I'm delivering it as if it were a punchline, but it's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I saw somebody. There was just a stupid like YouTube clip the other day of somebody just doing, like just unbelievable DDR routine. Like you've seen these people, and just like, oh man, he's good at that game. And he like spins around, and he's also playing the violin. I'm just like, okay, fine, just whatever. They needed to make it more difficult somehow.
That is that's some level of high end talent. That is me watching people play. What's the VR game that I like?
Oh, Beat Saber.
Beat Saber. Me watching people play Beat Saber on the internet, going, nope, I will never have the coordination to ever be good at that. But I'm impressed by your skills.
Got to start somewhere.
Yeah, that game does have a baby mode. There's got to be a baby mode in there.
Yeah, that's the other trick about these music games is that I feel like the easiest setting is usually way too easy, or it's just like easier than you want it to be. But then if you try and bump it at the next setting, it's just like, oh no, this is too much. I need something in the middle, and there usually isn't. It's not a smooth ramp up between difficulty modes. At least that's my experience.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. I have found there's difficulty ratings in the Just Dance songs, and I've basically stayed in the easiest collection. There's been one or two situations where I've explored the next highest tier, sort of the middle. It's 1, 2, 3 basically are the ratings, and the 3 is the most difficult ones. And I've dabbled in the 2s, and I'm like, nope, there's too much going on there. Can't quite keep up with that yet. That's advanced. We're gonna save that for later in the year.
Yeah, well, get to it eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. 400 songs, I'm sure. At some point or another, I'll figure it out.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Not expecting to hear about Just Dance.
No, I was not expecting to talk about it, but I've a goodly amount of the gaming time that I have spent over the last couple of weeks has been in these 3 games, basically. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to talk about it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, good luck. Hope you stick with it. Hope you stick with it longer than I stuck with Ring Fit, but maybe I'll bring that back.
Yeah, it's still there. I was waiting for you, DJ.
Yeah.
What have you...
Speaking of getting plenty of
exercise...
exercise...
what have you been playing? But I know the answer to that. Yeah.
You know what it is. We're playing a lot of Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker, which is the latest expansion. This came out while we were sort of on break at the end of the year last year, so I did not get to talk about it immediately. And I feel like the whole thing, or like sort of the opening salvo of the game, like the main storyline and everything, it's just come and gone since then. But I continue to stick with it, and I feel like at this point I have gotten plenty of hours in with it, to the point where I can finally discuss it here on the show.
Oh, excellent.
Plus, by special request, I have prepared a 5-minute sort of recap of the entire history of the game up to this point, because it has been had quite a tumultuous history.
I was like, who requested that?
But
it was me. It was me.
Careful what you ask for.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I think sort of intrigued me, and I remember just tiny elements of this, is that Final Fantasy XIV did not sort of arrive in the world in the state that it's in now. It was kind of a failure, right?
Yes, it was quite a failure.
Yeah.
But yeah,
now start the clock. Go.
Just to set this up, though, so Endwalker, latest expansion, notable this time because it is basically the conclusion of this main storyline that they have been sort of telling for the last 10 years since this game started in like 2010 or whatever, which is like, it's pretty unprecedented. Occasionally you'll see stuff like, I don't know, like Mass Effect tried to have a coherent storyline across all of its installations or installments. Maybe Assassin's Creed or just other long-running series have attempted this, but I feel like it's still fairly uncommon to present the story this way over such a long period of time.
In MMORPG games like this, is it uncommon to have this level of continuity across years and years of games?
That's an interesting question, and not really having played World of Warcraft, I just kind of assumed it was the same way. But apparently, the story in World of Warcraft is such, like, I don't know if I want to say it's an afterthought, but it is such a small consideration in the game compared to how they treat it in Final Fantasy. It's so different. So there will be like, there's sort of an ongoing progression of events in World of Warcraft, but it's not really like, I don't think people are sitting down like, oh man, when's the next Warcraft expansion coming out? I need to know what happens next. It's just a very different experience.
Right.
But going back to Final Fantasy XIV, just like 1.0, the original release, came out, I want to say like 2010, around then. I did not really spend a lot of time with it for various reasons, but one of the major reasons was that it was very bad, and in so many ways, it was just filled with like bad game design decisions. It was very like technically demanding. You needed to have a super high-end PC to be able to run it. It was also just incredibly buggy. It didn't run very well, even if you did have the hardware for it. So it just got obliterated by like critics and review sites and everything. People really did not enjoy playing it. This was very, very shortly after Final Fantasy XIII had come out to also the mostly negative reviews. And there were articles going around about how, I forget if they like tried to pin it on one of these games directly, but basically the Final Fantasy brand was in a bad place. And at the time, there were people who were just like, well, maybe this is it. Maybe there will just not be any more, as unimaginable as that sounds.
Wow.
Just because they had done such a bad job with these last two installments, and they had like taken so long and were so expensive. So they looked at this game. Square Enix looked at the state of Final Fantasy XIV 1.0, and they brought in this guy, Naoki Yoshida, who I believe was working on Dragon Quest X at the time. That's the Dragon Quest MMO. And he was like, or Square Enix told him, okay, we're bringing you on. Please do something about this game. See if you can salvage any of it. So he like joined the project. And after looking at it for a while, he said, okay, basically we have two options. We can try and fix what's currently there, but it is so broken that basically it will just never be good. We can like just put a bunch of band-aids on it, but it will always just be like this kind of husk of this game that's just really just inherently very flawed. Or the option two is we could just scrap this version entirely and try and rebuild a new thing, out of what we currently have. And they decided to go with Plan B. And as part of this, they actually shut down the game for a while. Like, people were actively subscribed. I think they made it free for some of those people for a while. I don't know. But at some point, they just shut it down. You couldn't play it anymore while they worked on this new version of the game. And the most incredible thing about this is that this entire process of shutting down the game and building a new MMO out of it, they actually wrote into the game storyline and like the world lore. So at some point in the story, there was this villain who wanted to, like, his whole master plan was there was like this moon, and he was going to crash it into Eorzea, which was the land where the game takes place. And so, like, during the last few months or weeks of the game being in operation, you would see this moon sort of slowly descending from the sky. And meanwhile, there's all sorts of other weird stuff going on, like monsters were spawning in cities, and the game designers would add new NPCs around the game world who would, like, talk to players about, like, very ominous kind of end-of-days stuff. And then when the servers actually went down for the last time, like, this moon, it descended, the servers went offline, and then it played this this movie, which ultimately ended up being like the intro movie to the new game, which shows the moon descending, and there's like this dragon that breaks out of it and like basically blows up the world. And then it was just sort of offline for, I forget how long, like many months, maybe like at least a year, until the new version came out. And then the new version picks up like 5 years later after this like cataclysmic event. And that's sort of like what everybody talks about for a lot of that that new expansion. They're just like, oh man, remember the great calamity when the moon descended? And everybody's memory is kind of fuzzy after that point because there was this time shift kind of thing.
Oh, interesting.
But what an amazing thing! Like, first of all, just what an interesting way to kind of bridge the 1.0 version and the new version, but also just an amazing experience to give to players who were playing that original version, because they basically just experienced this whole world-ending event.
So does that 1.0 version of the game still exist? Is that still playable, or is that sort of just wiped from history?
You cannot really play it. I think there's a way, like, people have figured out how to set up private servers, and like, I don't know exactly how it works, but you can somehow load the old game files and like run through some of the maps or stuff like that, but you can't just decide, oh, I'm going to go, play Final Fantasy XIV version 1.0 with my friends and do that. And they have said that they have like almost no interest in bringing that back, just because it was so bad. It was such a bad experience for people.
Right. Let's not remind everybody. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting. I think I would assume that if I were to sign up for Final Fantasy XIV and log in today, that I would start there. That like my progression would work me through all of these sort of versions of the game, but clearly not the intent.
It's basically how it works, except you start at 2.0. So you just don't have access to all that stuff before.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then so you know how it went from there. Like 2.0 was this like huge success, and it's just been getting more and more popular since then. It's like actually a legitimately amazing game. It's like a great MMO. It's a great just sort of Final Fantasy experience. Like I said, they've got a really heavy story focus, so I feel like that resonates well with a lot of people who grew up playing the old single player versions. And that brings us to Endwalker, which wraps up the storyline that like some of the threads originated way back in that 1.0 version. And I feel like it's not really like they had it mapped out from 1.0. They were like, okay, here it's going to be 1.0, 2.0, all the way up to 6.0, which is Endwalker, and these are the sort of the story beats which will be happening. It's more like they had this basic premise back at the beginning, and this is essentially the conclusion to it that we're now seeing in Endwalker. So yeah, it's kind of incredible that, first of all, they were able to turn the game around and just build on it to get it to the point where it is now. Like they've come such a long way, and the quality has improved so much even so, like when I started in 2.0, I remember having certain expectations. Like, okay, it's an MMO version of Final Fantasy, so there's obviously going to be some concessions. Like, it's not going to have quite as polished a presentation, and maybe the story won't be very good at all. But it's more about like the online multiplayer experience, right? It's more about being in this online world,
Mm-hmm.
and that was more or less true. I think the story for 2.0 is actually like pretty decent, especially for an MMO. It wasn't like the greatest Final Fantasy story or anything, but it was like passable. It was enjoyable from start to finish for the most part. But since then, they have just been figuring out ways to just, I don't know really how to define it, but they've definitely put more of a focus on recreating that very story-heavy classic Final Fantasy experience with each of these expansions, to the point where they, like in Endwalker, it feels like, this is definitely the most mature sort of attempt at that. And how that appears, or how that manifests in Endwalker, is that you have a lot more of like the core of the multiplayer experience is you doing these multiplayer dungeons and raids with your friends or other people online, right? But in Endwalker, they've noticeably put a lot of focus into these solo missions that you do as part of the main storyline, which, you're just kind of on your own. But whereas in the past, it would be like, okay, they just throw you into a dungeon by yourself or something, and you have to make it to the end and fight a few monsters along the way. They've gotten much more ambitious, to the point where, I should mention that I want to keep this spoiler free, but basically they have these different types of missions you go on. One's kind of like a cool stealth mission. Some others have you playing the roles of different characters as you go through. It's just so different than anything that you would find in the 2.0 version, and especially the 1.0 version, where all the little quests you would do were more along the lines of like the classic go and kill 3 squirrels or gather 5 like branches or whatever.
Right.
So it's just like a lot more interesting stuff to do between the multiplayer components of the game that really serve the story experience as well.
That's cool. That sounds very counterintuitive to what I anticipate from an MMO experience.
It is, yeah. I have thought that to myself quite a bit, because I feel like it's an MMO. You want to be showing off sort of the multiplayer, like online aspects of it.
Yeah,
but at the same time,
multiplayer part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. At the same time, though, they're very good about acknowledging, it is still a Final Fantasy game. So obviously you want these big sort of like story moments and these big set pieces, which are very memorable. But they managed to work them into the storyline and still preserve the multiplayer aspects elsewhere, which I think is interesting. Another thing they did is they have expanded a little bit on the system called trusts, which they introduced in the previous expansion, which that sounds even more counterintuitive. It lets you go through the like most of the new dungeons in the game with a bunch of AI party members, so you don't even have to have like either friends who play this, or just you don't have to party out with random people online, because I know that's creates a lot of friction for some people.
Oh wow.
And the first time they introduced this, I thought, well, okay, well, here's something I'm never going to use, because I have no problem just getting randomly matched with people. But like I ended up using it quite a bit in the previous expansion. I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. I can just do dungeons at my own pace, because these AI party members don't really care like how badly I'm doing, or maybe I'm trying out a new class for the first time and I don't really understand how it works. They're not going to like flame me afterward. And it seems like this time they've just made it more and more appealing to use this system as you go through all these dungeons. They've just sort of given you more incentive to use it, because they've expanded it to more NPC characters you can bring along. There are some instances where I found myself like, oh, I actually really want to run it with these NPC characters. Like, I would love to invite some of my friends in here to do the dungeon with me for the first time, but I'm just going to take these guys over here instead, because I think that would be cool.
These non-judgmental NPCs.
Yeah. So that's very exciting, and I think I would love to see them expand that back like retroactively to the previous expansions, because like I said, that a lot of people, especially as I learned coming from World of Warcraft, have a lot of anxiety about doing dungeons with other people, because apparently World of Warcraft players are just awful. And I'm not saying, I'm not like trying to slam World of Warcraft, but it sounds surprisingly toxic over there. It's really astonishing. But ultimately, I think it would be great if you could just go through this game and never really have to use the online features if you don't feel like it, which, again, sounds weird, but if that's what works for you, if that's what lets you enjoy the game, then that's great. So you should be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, online video gaming can be intimidating. It can be, as you said, super toxic. And it must take a lot to sort of want to subject yourself to that. I don't do it very often. But I imagine if you're, I don't know, if you're a person who's easily targeted or has an unusual voice or is, not the traditional online video game player compared to, I don't know, the perspective of horrible people on the internet. That can be a very sort of intimidating prospect. So, cool. It seems like it, really is an accessibility feature. It's another way for people to experience the game, without running into the barriers that online gaming generally presents.
Yeah, that's actually a good way of putting it, because like for a lot of people, it is just, they have an incredible amount of like anxiety about just being in one of these really toxic situations. And like, I don't want to do that either.
Sure.
Fortunately, the 14 community is just abnormally friendly to people and like very reasonable and understanding. And like, I still don't totally understand why that is. I like to think that like Final Fantasy players are just generally wholesome, but like usually you can get matched with people for these the multiplayer components, and it's totally fine. But if you just don't want to deal with it at all, there's the trust system, which I think is great. It's I wish they just introduced it sooner. It would have been even better.
That's cool.
So made a lot of effort in this version to make it feel more like a single player RPG, which I think is really weird, but ends up working very well. And then there's just the story this time around, which, because it's the final chapter of this whole thing, it has that feel of like, I don't know, like the Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, like the final chapter in that series, where it just feels like you recognize that this is this massive story that is beginning to reach the ultimate conclusion point. So you have all these returning sort of cameos from characters you've met along the way. At this point, the cast is just enormous. And even in the game world, they kind of acknowledge that, okay, this is really like this is it. Like, this villain has appeared who is threatening to essentially just bring down the apocalypse on this planet. And like, how are we possibly going to stop that? So it actually gets pretty bleak at times, where characters on the verge of giving up hope, and really looks like our heroes are not in a good spot. But the story does such a good job of addressing that as like one of the central themes, which it sounds incredibly generic because a lot of the core plot revolves around, how do you find like the motivation to continue on living, or how do you deal with just constant obstacles and despair every day, especially like, God, just look around you. There's like fire raining from the sky and these monsters appearing everywhere. How does anybody deal with that? But they managed to address it in really surprising ways, and from a huge number of different perspectives, which again, I don't want to give too much away. I don't want to give anything away, really, but I was just so constantly surprised by the turns this story would take, sort of getting everybody to this final confrontation and like wrapping up the storyline. It was just unbelievable.
Let me guess, we can do it if we work together.
There's a little of that in there, but there's it's not quite like Kingdom Hearts level.
No, not quite so bad.
Just believe in yourself and everything will be fine. Ooh. No, there's a little more substance.
Mickey Mouse
there.
Comes out and gives everybody a big speech, gets them all pumped up. Yeah,
the final climactic battle. Mickey Mouse appears and just saves everybody. It's great.
Good times.
Oh man, no, it's really, really good.
Cool.
I
No,
just
sorry, I don't mean to sort of like, poke fun at this thing that you love, clearly.
Oh no! I mean, I definitely had the same thoughts. Where I'm just like, I hope this just doesn't turn into, everybody believe in yourself, and because like I've heard that story before, and it's very inspiring. But I feel like you can do better than that.
And they do. It sounds like they
do.
landing.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, there are some scenes in this where I was just thinking to myself, like, I could never possibly just be a writer because how did they even come up with like ideas for some of these like just scenarios that they put people in? Like some of the characters that you meet are just again, not giving anything away. I don't really know how to describe this without spoiling anything. So maybe I just won't talk about it.
Yeah,
but I'm just like, I don't understand how you could put yourself in the mindset to write characters like this, like understand their perspective and the things they must be dealing with, because just the nature of these characters is so foreign to me. I don't know. There's so many points during the storyline where I was just completely like jaw on the floor over what was happening. It was just unbelievable.
Wow.
So yeah, so long story short, pretty good. I enjoyed it. Definitely a very fitting conclusion to this whole saga. Man, the previous expansion, Shadowbringers, I think took a lot of people by surprise, including myself, because for the last few, since 2.0, we've been kind of dealing with, we started out with the storyline that was like, it's all right. It could be better, but it's an MMO, so we'll let it slide a little bit.
Yeah.
And then they started putting out these next expansions, and we started going, oh, story is actually pretty good in this one. What's going on? They're like, they're really sort of like finding their mojo or whatever. And then Shadowbringers came out, and people were like, oh my god, what is going on? It shouldn't be this good. It's like, it was really unbelievable just how much the writing improved, starting with Shadowbringers, and just like the presentation and like all the ways that they wove together all these plot threads from the last, I guess, 8 years of the game at that point. To the point where people were like, okay, well, Endwalker's coming out. There's no way it could top Shadowbringers, because Shadowbringers, like, we don't know what was going on with that. They couldn't possibly do that twice. And I want to say, I'm still kind of rolling it over my head. I think I ultimately will enjoy Shadowbringers. That's probably my favorite out of all the expansions that have come out. It's probably like I've said on here before, it's my favorite Final Fantasy game, despite being like an expansion in this MMO.
Right.
But there are definitely points in Endwalker where I was like, I think they might do it. I think somehow they're going to do it. And ultimately, this is not like slogging on Endwalker, because, how could you possibly follow up Shadowbringers? Mm-hmm. But while it doesn't quite reach the same peak as Shadowbringers did, it's still just amazingly good. It does, it's so surprising. And I don't know what else to say. I feel like I'm just repeating myself at this point.
So they sound very connected, though, too. It sounds like the two of them kind of, played in succession would be quite an experience, I suspect.
Yeah, and that might be part of it. In a weird way, this feels more like Endwalker feels more connected to Shadowbringers than Shadowbringers or any of the previous expansions felt connected to each other. Yeah, so it's in some way it feels like it's a very like direct sequel to that expansion, which I think is good, because it allowed them to explore a lot of the themes that they brought up in that one, which are already very interesting.
Gotcha. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but what changed in the way that these games are made pre-Shadowbringers and post-Shadowbringers? Is there a creative lead that changed? I don't know what if there's transparency around those kinds of things. Is there some fundamental restructuring of the way that Final Fantasy XIV expansions were made prior to Shadowbringers?
Well, part of it is I feel like they're just flat out getting better at doing what they do, since they've been working on the game for so long, and the creative team has been pretty consistent.
Sure.
But like if you ask any player, they will say the major change was in Shadowbringers. They had a new head writer, who is Natsuko Ishikawa, who had previously done a bunch of like side quests for the game. But they just decided, I don't know, I think the lead writer at that point, I think the story is he took off to work on Final Fantasy XVI. So they just put this other writer in charge. Oh. And I don't know what the deal was, but she just completely ran with it to the point where, I mean, like, the story was incredible. And it built on all this, like, this last decade of lore and sort of build up in ways that nobody expected.
A massive challenge in its own right, I'm sure.
Yeah. And then she had a panel at PAX Prime that year, I think, the year Shadowbringers came out. And they were like introducing all the panelists. They were like, okay, they had like one of the art leads on there as well. And they're like, oh yeah, so yeah, I'm Natsuko Ishikawa. I wrote the main scenario, like all the main scenario quests. And she just got an immediate standing ovation from like an entire theater full of people. It was just like mind blowing to see.
That's cool.
So I feel like she deserves quite a bit of the credit, but also, you know, it's just a team effort. They have really honed their craft over the last 10 years of this thing existing. They really are putting a lot of themselves into it. It's just been amazing to see the progress.
Cool. So what happens next? And this is the final Final Fantasy XIV thing. Do we roll into 15 at this point, or is that already a thing, or how does you know, what do you go from here, DJ?
Well, that's the big question. And they've said, like, okay, this Endwalker is the conclusion of this 10-year storyline. After this, it's going to be a new storyline. And people are like, oh, I don't even know what that means. It's like, is it going to be another storyline that lasts 10 years? Is it going to be a couple years of like clip shows, or what's going on? What's the plan, guys?
Remember that time?
Yeah, exactly. One thing they did differently this time is that previously, when they launch an expansion, they'll do like the big expansion launch, and they will do like every 3 months have a new patch that expands on the storyline. And I'd like to use the TV show analogy, where every new expansion is like a new season of a TV show. So it's like the same characters come back and you have new adventures with them and all that stuff. But this is where it kind of like I struggle to fit this format into the analogy, because they will do the expansion and they'll do like 3 patches afterward that kind of like provide additional closure to the story that they told in the expansion. So there's always that expectation where you get the expansion and you get like another year's worth of storyline, essentially.
Oh, gotcha.
But they said this time they're not doing that. So you have the entire Endwalker storyline is like done now. But there's still this expectation, like, pretty sure we're still going to get a couple years of these 3-month patches. And currently we don't really have any... We have like clues about what that might entail, but nothing really concrete. And in fact, Naoki Yoshida, the producer, just got on, he was on some podcast or like radio show this weekend. And he was talking a little bit about what people can expect looking forward. And there was this quote. He said, he was talking about 7.0, which would be the next expansion. And he said, there may be, this is a direct quote, there may be drastic changes that will surprise you.
Oh.
I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that.
I don't know what that surprised.
Exactly. Yeah, so like, I don't know what to think. But I mean, I have full confidence in this team. I'm just, you know, they love to be super vague in terms of like what's coming next. I think they just enjoy being coy with people.
Yeah.
But no, I'm sure it'll be good. I kind of hope that I don't know, they like dial down the scale a little bit, because it feels like the stakes in Endwalker are so high, like you can't possibly follow that up. Like it would just be ridiculous. You would just be like going out and rescuing entire galaxies full of Final Fantasy characters or something. I kind of hope they'll just do like a lighthearted, I don't know, like smaller stakes expansion. But we'll see. We'll see what the future has in store.
Something a little more mundane, a little more humble.
Yeah, that sounds good. We'll take a little break. And meanwhile, the game has just been, like, the popularity has just continued to explode to the point where it's like you have to wait in a queue to log into the game at this point. The queue problems were so severe at one point that they just stopped selling new copies of the game. They actually pulled a lot of their advertising, which seems like that's pretty wild. That seems unprecedented.
Yeah. I believe they call that champagne problems.
Yeah, seriously. Somebody pointed out, I love this, that this is probably the only game where they have suspended sales, both because the game was too bad and also because it was too popular. So just amazing to see like the way they're able to turn this thing around.
Well, that's cool. Well, I'm super happy for you. That's we have joked in the past about continuing to go back to the Final Fantasy well and me sort of tolerating it, but it's it has been quite an arc to watch this thing sort of grow and evolve, and I clearly know how much you're enamored with it, and it's exciting to hear that it has sort of semi-wrapped up in a way that you find very satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, I take comfort in knowing that they are still going to continue it, and it's not like, oh, okay, that's it, turn off the lights. They still have plans for future stuff, but
yeah,
I also do like that it's like a break from everything that has come up to this point, and I'm really curious to see what they will actually do, like how they will change it up, if so.
Yeah, I think that is the challenge and a bit of the downside sometimes with, long-running video game series that constantly feel the need to sort of one-up the previous iteration of it. That's always the challenge. And, Grand Theft Auto games and Saints Row, and it's just the scale keeps growing and growing and growing until what was the thing in Saints Row? You're the president of the United States and a superhero, I think, at the end. And it bears no resemblance to sort of the thing that started. So, yeah, it's cool that, people keep buying them and that games have long enough runways to be able to sort of explore these things. But at some point, you got to bring it back, right? It back.
That's a good example, actually.
Yeah.
I was just like, by the time was it the fourth one? You were the superhero? And you spend the entire game flying around the city, and you're just like, why would I get in a car at this point?
Right.
Like, why would I play Grand Theft Auto when I am just playing this superhero simulator?
Why are there even cars in this game? Seriously.
Yeah. That was so weird. So yeah, I hope they have they've like got their game plan in mind for future expansions.
Yeah.
Oh man, but so relieved. I mean, not relieved because I knew it was going to be good, but just so pleased with how this turned out. It's really good.
Will that next thing, whatever sort of that new story, that sort of restart, will that be under the sort of the blanket of Final Fantasy XIV, or does that get sort of a new entry?
Pretty sure it'll be the same thing. Although my favorite sort of just like ridiculous rumors that keep popping up, the people will be like, what if it'll be like Final Fantasy XVII? What if they just blow up the game again and make another one? Which I don't think that's going to happen, but like that would be wild if they did.
Yeah. 14.5.
Yeah, they did. Well, so my suggestion, they've done Final Fantasy X-2 and like 13.2 in the past, as
I remember that.
Absolutely
yes.
stupid as that is.
Yeah.
But I was just like, here it is, Final Fantasy 14.2. There's a precedent. We could just totally do that. That would be amazing.
There are no rules.
Yeah.
Well, excellent.
So, I will definitely keep you informed whatever comes next. I want to recommend again, there's this documentary by No Clip who does, they do documentaries on a bunch of games, which seem very interesting. I've only watched the 14 one, which is very good. But they have this 3-part documentary series on YouTube you can watch for free that covers the progress from the 1.0 version of the game to the rebirth in 2.0. And even if you aren't like really interested in Final Fantasy XIV specifically, it's really fascinating. It's like a cool look into just like MMO or video game development, which I feel like is pretty rare, especially with a huge Japanese developer like this. So definitely worth checking out. I will put the link again in the show notes at VGHangover.com if you want to check it out. It's like a couple hours long from start to finish.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I was going to talk about Witchwood, but we are well beyond sort of the arbitrarily determined time that we wrap this thing up. So I will come back next week with more thoughts on Witchwood. We'll save that for next week.
Wait, Witchwood?
Witchwood.
Which one? Which?
Never
mind.
Who's on first? So apologies to anybody who waited to this point to hear me talk about Witchwood. You know who you are.
I was actually really looking forward to hearing about this. So it's my own fault, though.
It's a good game. It's very entertaining. I've had a good time with it. So I will talk enthusiastically about it at the start of next week's show.
Okay, good. Well, I'll make sure to be here.
There you go. If you need any more video game hangover in your brain, you should follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover. You can always get show notes and links and tell us what you thought about the episode at VGHangover.com. We would love for you to hang out with us on Discord and chat about video games, chat about pop culture. I don't know what else. I've been looking for Wiimotes. I need Wiimotes. Go to our Discord and tell me where to buy a Wiimote. Unfortunate side effects.
If I get started on this, it's going to add like 20 minutes to the show. So I'm just going to leave that right there.
Okay. Well, to be continued, maybe. You can get a link to our Discord to hang out with DJ and I and talk about all of these things at VGHangover.com as well. We would love for you to subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else you can get a podcast. And help us out by telling your friends about this show.
Yes, it really helps us out. Really helps us get the word out and pick up new listeners. We really appreciate it if you just tell one of your confused friends who maybe doesn't even know there are podcasts about video games out there to listen to us. Yeah. I don't know what's going on. Just put an iPod in their hand with a show on it. I don't know. Speaking of iPods, I want to give thanks again to Protodome for our intro and outro music this week. It would be great if you went to protodome.bandcamp.com. You can listen to a few more of his albums there. Maybe add a few of them to your cart. That would be terrific.
Nice. All right, we will be back next week. Until then, this is Randy Dickinson.
This is DJ Ross.
Thanks so much for listening to Video Game Hangover. Goodbye.
Good night.
See ya.